This Week in Startups is brought to you by WordPress.com. Right now, WordPress is offering you 15% off any new plan purchase. To create your small business website today, visit WordPress.com/twist. And Upside, the best new way to buy business travel. Visit Upside.com, enter the promo code TWIST, and you're guaranteed to get at least a $100 Amazon gift card after booking your first trip.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. It's an all Ask Jason episode. Yes, I'm Jason Calacanis. This is This Week in Startups, and you are going to ask me questions. I'm going to answer them candidly. I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth shall make you free. These are questions from founders, actual people, who are struggling with their startups. And let's face it, most days at a startup, you have more problems than you have solutions. You have many more bad days than good days. It's a real slog. We all know this. So let's get right to the questions. And they're great questions, by the way. I had 40 questions backed up. We're going to try to get to 6, 7, 8 of them today. And the first question is from Christine. She asks, why do most startups fail after product market fit has been achieved? Okay, so she's talking about a situation where product market fit has happened, and even with product market fit, the startup has failed. This is a great question. For those of you who don't know what product market fit is, it means there's a market of people who can appreciate your product. Said another way, there are people who are delighted, obsessed, or otherwise in need of what you've got. You built the better mousetrap. So now that you understand the definition of product market fit, if you didn't before this, it would seem if consumers love your product and they need your product, then you should be able to make a business out of it. Au contraire, mon frère. This is not always the case. Many times, companies with decent product market fit will fail. Why? Well, there's really two categories. One is you achieve product market fit, but it doesn't have the scale, the velocity, or the depth of connection, the depth of fit that would make it a great business. Let's unpack that a bit. So let's say you have product market fit and you build an amazing service. It's Uber for dry cleaning. And it turns out that the people, the first 100 customers in your town are obsessed with your Uber for dry cleaning. It's Druber, dry cleaning Uber. And Druber happens to be in Bel Air or Atherton, where people are willing to pay $7 to press a shirt and $20 to press a jacket and a suit. They don't care, in other words. Or it's Bel Air, someplace where there's just a ton of rich people. It turns out that the delivery cost, picking up, dropping off is so great in that case that you wouldn't know as a founder because you're getting these high NPS scores and those people feel great about it and you have high margins. Now you try to go down the road to Santa Monica or Marina del Rey. I'm using towns in Southern California. Or if it was Manhattan versus Brooklyn, and then, God forbid, Staten Island. No offense, Staten Island. I'm joking. I kid. I'm from Bay Ridge. And you start going further out, and maybe people don't even have clothes to dry clean. They don't dry clean clothes regularly. They have 2 suits. They wear them to a wedding and to a funeral. That's it. So in other words, you had product market fit, but it was too small of a group of people. Now, another thing can happen is you have product market fit, and there's too many competitors. And what happens when there's too many competitors? Well, it's just like nature. When there's too many sharks in the ocean or too many top-level predators, they eat all the little fish, then they starve, they eat each other, and the boom-bust cycle starts again. We see that in startups all the time. We had a period of time when everybody thought Webvan and other delivery services like Cosmo and Urban Fetch. You probably don't recognize these names, but if you went through the dot-com boom in the 90s, you do. And those companies all failed. Why? Too much competition. Urban Fetch came out and said, we'll deliver anything to you, and we'll do it at half price and free delivery. What? They literally would give you a pint of Haagen-Dazs in the 90s for $1.50 instead of $3, which is what it cost at the bodega down the block from my loft in Chelsea. And I said to myself, why would I go out in the middle of the rain when I could just order my Haagen-Dazs and my New York Times and get it at half price? So competition can kill product market fit, right? Another thing that can happen is, founder distraction. So this I've seen many times. You start to get a little product market fit and you get a little emboldened. And then you go too quickly to the next thing. So an example of this might have been Airbnb. Everybody knows Airbnb. You rent your couch. In the early days of Airbnb, I remember it was such a unique business model. People were saying, why don't they have Airbnb for boats, Airbnb for cars, Airbnb for bicycles, Airbnb for lawnmowers, right? Well, it turns out that those concepts would have distracted them from the high margin, high value, deep product market fit of renting out an apartment or an extra bedroom. Why did that work so well? Because they were getting paid a decent margin, a decent commission on a very expensive purchase, $100, $200 a night. Average stay, 3 nights. Now you're looking at a $300 to $900 purchase. Now, if you were to go to something like, say, oh, let's create Airbnb for cars. Well, I only need it once a week, and it's $50. Okay, now we're down to lawnmowers. Oh, I need it once a month, and I'm willing to pay $25 because the lawnmower costs $150. You get the idea. When the founder gets distracted and they start expanding too quickly, all of a sudden, product market in one category that Midas Touch does not follow them to the next category. So it's something to be very careful of as founder distraction. What you want to do is find product market fit, ideally, and then see if you can scale it and see if you have pricing power. In other words, if you charge more, would people still use the product? And what's the breaking point? Would, Instacart, right, going back to Webvan and other things that failed, Instacart added, I think, a $5, a $10 a month membership or something that we have in our household, and a $5 delivery charge, and they just made it more expensive. And you know what? We were so addicted, we were so delighted by Instacart that there was no way we would give it up. Good Eggs is another Instacart-like service, but for higher-end food, we're addicted to that as well. That one has smaller product market fit because it's a much more expensive product. They have yogurt from French purveyors in glass jars. That's $8. It's ridiculous. And you may have the Greek yogurt from Whole Foods that's half the price for twice as much, right? So you get the idea. You have to be very careful in what market you've actually fit your product to. So great question. The most important thing I can tell you is to stay focused. Most people get they find the United States of America. They find North America. And you know what? They never leave Massachusetts. Whereas the people who did really well were the ones who made it to America and got out to California and went up and down the coasts, right? You want to keep that discovery process, keep pulling that string and see where it leads you as a founder. Great question, Christine. Thank you. Hey everybody, let me tell you about a product I've been using for over 10 years. It's WordPress.com. Small business owners, WordPress.com is saluting you. They know you're out there making a big difference, creating jobs, and creating great products and services. WordPress is the perfect solution to build your website and keep it up to date. They are powering more websites with WordPress than any other platform. They've been at this for a long time. I've known Matt Mullenweg forever. He's been on this podcast, I think, 3 times. He's a fantastic founder. And that's why I use WordPress on calacanis.com and this very site, thisweekinstartups.com. They provide great design features and 24-hour support 7 days a week. You can pick from 350 easy-to-use themes. Just pick a domain, select a plan, and start building. It's mobile-friendly, super easy to use. Go to wordpress.com/twist, wordpress.com/twist, and you will be able to create your small business website today, and you'll get 15% off any new plan purchase. That's right, 15% off wordpress.com/twist. It's a great product and a great founder and a great team over there. So go ahead and visit wordpress.com/twist. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Okay, this one's from Sunny. With the current trends in the market, what advice would you give companies that take longer to monetize, such as social apps? Great question, Sunny. Okay, so we're sitting here. It's 2017. You may be watching this on YouTube, and it's 2027. Who knows? You may be watching it in your VR headset. So this advice could be wrong in 2027. That's one of the interesting things about startups. Some advice is timeless. Some advice has an expiration date. In this case, I'm going to give you some timeless advice. A lot of businesses take a long time to reach scale and to reach a level in which you would want to turn on monetization. What you want to do is get product market fit first, Understand your market. When you have that, generally speaking, you can turn on monetization. There are some companies that just have such an obvious business model they charge from day one. An example of that would be Uber or Airbnb taking a percentage of everybody's transaction. Other companies like Slack or Yammer, they might give it out for free and try before you buy. So they do it based on usage. But generally speaking, the great companies have a business model built in. They will sometimes defer. So what we're really talking about here is advertising-based companies. I think that's really what Sunny's talking about. So for social apps, which are advertising-based to date, well, you shouldn't go to an advertiser with 1,000 people a day, or even 10,000, or even 100,000. You really need to get to 1 million people a day for any type of advertiser to care. So anything you do in that space, social or any advertising-based business, it should really be about getting to that 1 million people a day, 10 million people a month. And then you can start to have an ad team. Before that, it just doesn't make sense because even if you do sell it, you're not going to have enough inventory for any real advertisers to care. So in this case, what should you do as a founder? The number one most important thing is to keep your burn low. The biggest mistake I see people make in startups is they raise $500,000. They go, $500,000, I'm going to hire a PR firm for $35,000 a month. I'm going to get a new office space for $15,000 a month. And I'm going to hire these 5 developers for $15K a month. And now all of a sudden, they're at a $125K burn rate, and they've burned through their $500K in under 6 months. And they're at month 3 going, where'd all the money go? Better to raise the 500. Just have you and your co-founder or you and 2 co-founders sitting there, 3 people, working from home, working from a really cheap sublet, spending $400 or $500 on rent, if that, and just really try to grind it out with low burn culture. If you have a low burn rate culture, you're never going to make short-term decisions because you're not going to be looking at how many months of runway you have. Whereas the people who have 5 months of runway, 4 months of runway, 3 months of runway, they just think differently. They're thinking, what shenanigans, what rabbit can I pull out of a hat in order to impress my existing investors or new investors to give me $1 million or another 500? And you can basically play that game 2, 3, maybe 4 times before your investors go, you know what? I've written 4 checks, 3 checks, 2 checks. It hasn't happened yet, and other outside investors are not willing to validate this company. Screw it, I'm out. I'll find another. If I'm going to write a 4th check, I might as well give it to somebody else who can get it done with 1 or 2 checks than this company that's proven they can't get it done, and I've written them 3 checks. And these people have high burn culture, and these other people have low. So if I give $100,000 to this next group of people, and they're only burning $10K a month, wow, it lasts for 10 months. If I give it $100K to a company burning $125, it lasts for 3 weeks. We make these judgments as investors, especially early stage ones. So low burn culture. Going to San Francisco is a mistake if you have your pre-product market fit and you're trying to scale and make a connection. That's why a lot of people today are coming to the Valley on a regular basis, or maybe living in Santa Cruz or Los Angeles or, in Napa or Healdsburg or wherever, Seattle, Austin, other cities, and then San Diego. Getting that product market fit, slowly figuring out the problems, keeping a low burn culture, then coming maybe to an incubator like Launch Incubator or Y Combinator or Highway One, and then, going a little bit bigger here in San Francisco, right? So I always say, hey, this is a great place to be. There's one caveat to that. It's a great place to be if you can live frugally, which is a specific challenge here. If you are older founders and you have 3 kids in private school and you need a 5,000 square foot or you need a 5-bedroom house because you have 3 kids and whatever, you're going to burn through a lot of money in this town, let me tell you. So you have to be cognizant of this fact and keep that low burn culture until such time that you can raise money based on your month-to-month growth. If you're growing 5%, 10% week over week, I believe with these social apps, you will be fundable by angels and venture capitalists forever, essentially. Because 5% compounding growth is extraordinary. I don't know how many weeks it takes you to double, but it's not many, maybe 15 or something. You're going to grow very fast. So get to that 5% growth and just keep trying to move it from 2% week over week to 3% week over week to 4% and see if you can consistently do that. If you can do that, you will grow forever and you'll be fundable forever because people will look at it and just draw the line. 5% weekly growth is going to put them here in 2 years. That's when we turn on advertising. Great question, Sunny. Hey, everybody, I want to tell you about a brand new service called upside.com. My assistant Jess has been using it here, and it is awesome. You go to upside.com and you book your hotel and your flight together, and they give you an Amazon gift card for between $100 and $300. Yes, if you are booking your hotel and your airline ticket together, your flight and your hotel together, that saves a lot of money for you. And they pass that along in the form of an Amazon gift card. If you're a frequent biz traveler, your company saves a bunch of money, and you can get thousands of dollars a year just by buying your air and hotel together at upside.com. Plus, you'll still get all your miles, so there's no issue there. And it takes about 3 minutes, or less, actually. I did it less than 3 minutes, to see how much you can save by buying your flights and hotel together for one low price. So here is your call to action. Please go to upside.com and enter the promo code TWIST, and you will get at least a $100 Amazon gift card for free for your first trip. It is a no-brainer. Save big on travel and get a big gift card every trip. That call to action, one more time, go to upside.com and use the promo code TWIST. It's great to have you as a partner on the podcast. Thanks a lot to Upside for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. Okay, speaking of which, let's get back to this amazing episode. Okay, we have another question from Leo, and it's about patents, one of the subjects I hate most. It would be better if I filed my patent before I present my project to investors, but I don't have the money for a patent lawyer. What do I do? Okay, Leo, it's an interesting question, but I don't think it's a good question. I think you have some fundamental mistakes here. Investors are not going to steal your patent ideas. They're too busy. You don't understand the fundamental nature of being an investor. I can tell you, my team and I get pitched on hundreds of startups a week. We have time to meet with maybe a half dozen, a dozen in person. Then we do some big rushes where we might see a dozen a day for a couple of days. It's very hard for us to sort through everything. The last thing we have time to do is to find a founder who has a great idea and then go run and file a patent. I have no patents. If you go to all the VCs I know, I can tell you none of them have filed a patent recently. 99 out of 100 have probably never filed a patent. If they did file a patent, it was probably 10 years ago before they got into investing. There is no time for us to goof around trying to steal your IP or your ideas. We don't necessarily believe patents are important in our industry. We actually think patents are kind of like nuclear weapons. They're there as a deterrent to keep other people from suing you. So some people will file what's called defensible patents or defensive patents, so that if you tried to sue Tesla or SpaceX, they might have some patents. But even there, Elon Musk has said he doesn't like to file too many patents because then it gives people a roadmap of what they're working on and what's important to them and how to compete with them. So they're generally defensive, and they're generally not necessary. That being said, I have met people who have learned to file their own patents, and those people tend to not be successful in life. Just an observation. There are people who are obsessed with patents. They file them, but they don't have the wherewithal to be an entrepreneur and to execute on the patents. Second, there are firms out there, law firms, who will defer payment on patents if they believe in you as a founder. So if they believe that you have the goods to create an amazing product or service in the universe, they might actually file your provisional patents for you for $5,000 instead of $15,000, or they might do 5 of them for $10,000, and they believe in you and you give them a little equity in your company, and then you can pay them after you get your funding. That does exist. If you're out here in Silicon Valley, if you have credibility, you could find a firm, a high-tier, an upscale firm that might do that for you. Generally speaking, these patents are not super important. So you sound like a rookie entrepreneur who is just scared of having your idea stolen. If you're scared of having your idea stolen, you're not going to ever compete, ever. Right now, we're watching a dogfight between 10 major players over self-driving cars. None of those people are really, at the end of the day, while they all file patents for provisional stuff and they all have trade secrets, they're trying to win it in the marketplace of ideas. They're trying to get their products on the road, right? Because they know technology quickly becomes commoditized. And even if people have patent protection, you can license the patent from them. What matters is who can execute on that patent and get it out there. Okay, so you overvalue patents probably a little too much. If you do care about them as much as you do, learn how to file them yourself or find a law firm that believes in you and your ability. But generally speaking, you do not have to worry, in my mind, with investors stealing patents. No investors take the time to file patents. And also, if you think they're going to take your idea and tell their friends and their friends are going to file the patents, again, you haven't been paying attention. Investors know that their reputation will be destroyed by passing of intellectual property between companies or mishandling of it. Does that mean it never happens? Of course not. But if it does happen, it's a very rare occasion in my mind. I would never, ever take a pitch that I got and forward it on to anybody, ever. Even another investor, even a family member, even a friend. I would never do it. I would just say, the most I would ever say is, if the company was public and had a news story out there, I might say, oh, you might want to take a look and read this story. That's how we would handle it, right? So if there was a competitor to one of my portfolio companies and they pitched me, number one, I tell them, I have a competitor in my portfolio. We probably shouldn't meet. Or is that a problem for you? Do you see yourself as competitive? In that case, I'd literally would, if the person was public and had a video on the internet and a landing page and a homepage, and I might tell a founder, hey, you should check out this company. It looks like they're doing something interesting. But I would never, ever send any private information. It's just crazy. Okay. Terrible question. I know, I'm kidding. It's just a naive question. Okay, Michael has a pair of questions. I'm going to go with his second question, which is, will venture capital support benefit corporations at the expense of faster returns? So I'm going to leave out the second part of the question, which is at the expense of faster returns, and just say generally, will venture capitalists and venture capital firms and venture capital, the category, ever support a benefit corporation? My gut tells me, having watched this for a couple of years now and being an investor in one great benefit company, hand up, that benefit companies are not something that venture capitalists are interested in at this time. Why? Well, we'd have to talk to 100 venture capitalists, but generally in the market like it is today in 2017, when you're watching this, there are too many great deals and not enough time to review them. Any way you can disqualify a company or a founder helps you through the sorting of all these great opportunities. So some VCs say, I don't invest pre-product market fit. So come to me after you have some traction. Other ones say, we only do Series B and on. So we only do when you're in the scaling mode of your company. Other people say, we only run an incubator, and the incubator, you have to have your product completed, which is how we run Launch Incubator. You have to have a product in the market. You don't have to have massive traction, but you have to have the product done so we can help you grow it. If it's not done, then we're sitting there waiting for you to finish, right? Makes sense. So given all of that, when you throw in some wild card, it basically will give, in my experience, venture capitalists who have too many amazing deals to choose from and not enough time, it just gives them a really easy way to say, not in my wheelhouse. Just like they might say, I don't do dating apps, or I don't do enterprise, or I don't do life science. I don't do benefit corporations. It is a scarlet letter to a certain extent. And to prove this, if you go back and you listen to the episode where I interviewed Rose from Hand Up, when she pitched me on investing, I said, no, I'll just give you a donation. Because in my mind, benefit corporation sounds like it's never going to be a real business. I was wrong, of course, it is a real business. But I think I had probably what everybody else was. A benefit corporation is sort of like a nonprofit. And it is, in a way, but it's also very different. So I'll give you a little background on a public benefit corporation. There are, I think, just about a dozen and a half, maybe 16 to 20 states that formally recognize the concept of a benefit corporation. In my mind, it sits, and I'm not a total expert on this, I'm not an attorney, but I think it kind of sits between a nonprofit and a for-profit in that, one of the big differences is you have a stated mandate for why your company benefits society and its employees and the world and the planet, all those pieces of society as a construct. So you have to state in your articles of incorporation, at least as I understand it, excuse me, you have to state what is your purpose? Why are you doing this? What is the benefit to society? So let's say it's Hand Up, you're trying to help people transition from homeless and out of poverty, transition out of homelessness and transition out of poverty. Great. sounds like a noble mission to me. There's really another second thing which I find super interesting, and I don't know if this applies only to California benefit corporations, but the board of directors and the governance of the company, the benefit corporation, has to consider not just the shareholders or the shareholders above all else, which is how regular companies work. The shareholders are the most important people to consider. The company and the shareholders are what come first in a regular corporation. In a benefit corporation, all the stakeholders are looked at, I think, equally. And you can check with an attorney of exactly how this works, because it's a very new thing and it's very different per state, I believe. Now, what that means is if there was some massive decision to make, shutting the company down, selling the company, all different situations, you would look at the stakeholders, which are employees, the mission of the company, the partners, the community, all of these things around the company, as well as the shareholders. So you wouldn't put the shareholders first. We have this long-standing tradition. The shareholders have to be compensated. The shareholders, when you have a bankruptcy, have to be put first, all of these things, not the customers. That's why in a bankruptcy case, sometimes you'll see the bankruptcy judge will say, oh, you had a terms of service that said the customer list can do this or that, or the contracts you had with these people said X, Y, and Z, and they'll just negate those contracts and say, we're selling all these assets, these contracts are going away, and the shareholders are going to get their money back in this order, right? So it's kind of interesting. So benefit corporations, interesting concept. I think if you do it, you're going to be part of the vanguard. If you're specifically targeting, investors like, say, Pierre Omidyar, or social-driven investors who are investing largely their own money, not for returns in cash, but returns in societal benefit, it might actually put you in their favorite bucket. I'm not sure. So it's definitely something to look at, but not if you want to have a venture-based business. So to answer your question succinctly and clearly, Michael, do not, if you're trying to get venture capital, be a benefit corporation. Be a marauding capitalist. Okay. Here's a great question, and it's a personal question, which I like. Krista asks, what's a lesson you learned the hard way? Do you mind sharing it with us so we might not also have to learn the hard way? Of course. I have many lessons. I talk about some of them in my book, Angel, coming out July 18th, 2017, by HarperCollins. Little plug there. One that comes to mind for me is focus. I might have undiagnosed ADHD or ADD. I don't know. Who knows? They weren't diagnosing it when I was a kid. But a lot of times my mind moves very quickly, and I have a lot of ideas, and I want to execute on them. And I've been particularly good in my career about willing things into being. In other words, I have an idea, and then in a very short time, it exists in the world. It's just something I do. What that can create, if you're one of those people who feels they can will anything into being in the world just by starting and saying, today we're going to do this. This Week in Startups is an example. At one point I said, I want to have a podcast about startups, and boom, I had it going the next day. Or a launch festival. I want to have the large festival with 10,000 people getting free tickets like Sundance. Boom. And then all of a sudden it happens for 10 years. The problem with that is you get so good at starting things, you get so good at executing on things that you wake up one day and you've got 20 little babies there. And making the babies was really easy. But taking care of the babies is very hard. This is a massive life lesson I've had to learn. Be careful what you start, because starting is easy, but finishing is hard. So you have to have an idea of where do you want to take this? And when I look at projects now, I really think about that. What will I want to have accomplished when this product sees the light of day? So with the book, I set a very small goal for myself. I want to write this book because I'm hoping that some group of people, could be a dozen, it could be 1,200, it could be 12,000, it could be 1,000,000 eventually, become angel investors, and that some portion of those angel investors hit huge returns and have their lives and the people around them have their lives changed forever, and the entrepreneurs they invest in have their lives changed forever. Because there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines right now in real estate, in bonds, in stocks of public companies like Apple and Google, that's sitting there, and it's not really helping the world. It's just sitting there collecting a small dividend or a small increase in value every couple of years. And I think that some portion of that money should be unlocked and given to entrepreneurs, and more people should have a chance to start a company. And I believe that those angel investors should have the chance to hit 100x or 1,000x return. And if you invest in 50 companies and you have one hit 100x, you're going to have changed your lot in life because you've got the joy of starting 50 companies and the enjoyment of it. And you've got now doubled your money, tripled your money. Who knows what you'll eventually hit, depending on when you sell your shares in those companies. If you do it the way I talk about in the book, I hope that's the case. And I think the downside risk is maybe you lose 1 to 5% of your net worth. But before I did the book, I thought that through. Do I want to spend 20 days of my life on this? Do I want to have the book out there? Do I want to have to support the book, do a book tour and all that kind of stuff? So I think about that every project. And then I look at projects I existing have and I say, how many episodes of This Week in Startups should there be a year? Should there be 104, twice a week, every week, no weeks off? Should we take some weeks off for August and December and the holidays and have 90 episodes? Should I make it one time a week and increase the quality of the guests and do less and put more wood behind arrows? I constantly reassess that kind of stuff. This all goes under the bucket of focus. And it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life is that the people who succeed really are considered about what projects they start and how focused they are on them, how they staff them. You think you get the idea. Starting is easy, finishing is hard. It is a hard life lesson to learn, but it's an important one. And I don't mean it to dissuade people from starting. Starting stuff is awesome, but you got to be able to shut it down, move on, hand it over, and move on with your life to start the next thing. So just keep that in mind, because while it's okay to have multiple pokers in the fire, and there's an adage, multiple pokers in the fire, you don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. So for all of these colloquialisms and expressions, I can give you the counter ones, right? A lot of times I see more often than not founders fail because they take on too much and they don't stay focused enough. So stay focused. That's a hard lesson I've learned in my career, and I've really started to work on that. When I need to get focused on something, like the book or like an event or whatever I'm working on, I just really try to stay focused on. Inside.com is another perfect example of focus. We could do many things. It could be inside, Google and inside Snapchat and inside drones, and we can make a podcast for each one. But I said, you know what? We can experiment with one podcast, but let's stay focused on inside getting to 50 newsletters first. And we're at 25, I think. Because I just said to myself, if we have 50 newsletters, we've got something significant, right? So before we get distracted to add the next product line, stay focused, right? Starting easy, finishing hard. Here's a great question from my main man, Aaron. He says, thoughts on the state of VC and consumer apps? Great question. All right. If you look at the age of apps, it is very crowded in the App Store. And acquiring new customers, getting people to do an app install, as we say in the business, has gotten more and more expensive as people have learned how to make money from apps. And if you look at the top apps, a large percentage of them are owned by Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, etc. So when you just go down that list, you're going to see a company like Facebook owning 10 of the top apps and Google owning 20 of the top 100 or whatever it is. It's pretty unnerving. It's a very crowded ecosystem, and consumer apps are extremely difficult because consumers are fickle. They are apt to try and not repeat, and they forget. So when I had Inside.com as a news app, we had all these wonderful reviews from the press, from users. But for some reason, only 1 or 2% of the people who downloaded the app actually used it. It was very peculiar. And we realized, my God, people use a small subset of apps. They lock into 6, 7, 8 apps, sometimes less. And the average number of apps people were adding to their phone in 2016 and 2015 and 2017, like that whole time period, was the great unapping. People were adding no apps per month. And you might look at your own behavior and say, yeah, I stopped adding apps. And the big trend was people going through their phone and deleting their apps. And you probably have had this experience as well. I'm just going to get some of this cruft off of my phone. It's too much stuff in here. So whenever a new device like the iPhone comes out and a new concept like the App Store, people will get very, the early adopters try everything. And then you have this massive, massive graveyard, this just huge amount of, dead startups and dead apps. And that's exactly what's happened. If you look at news as a category, So many of the consumer news apps are out of business or sold or merged. I was an investor in Circa. We gave up on Inside the News app in favor of email. And now we have literally 100 times the number of people engaging with us per day and week. It's just tremendous, the difference. So consumer apps, extremely hard. And a lot of things have been tried. There are some shining spots, which are, if you do one thing extremely well, the singularness of your app can become virtuous. An example of that would be calm.com, which I'm an investor in. They benefit from two of the trends that I think are important. One, focus. They're very focused on one thing, meditation. And two, subscriptions. So there's something in the App Store now called subscriptions. You know, you've probably done it with a couple of different products. You pay per month or pay per year, and they just renew it every month. And now you get those emails. Hey, would you like, by the way, you're getting billed in a week. You know, if you want to unsubscribe, go to your subscribe settings. So I think subscriptions are a really interesting area of the App Store. I'm surprised that some games haven't gone to subscription, you know, where they charge people like Bejeweled or something like that. Maybe they do, but I haven't seen that in a big way. I think they like to charge people for coins and get the whales to buy them every day, every week. But I am very down on consumer apps. That being said, you can build them quicker. And if you're patient and you build something that has singular value to a small group of people, it's certainly not something to ignore. I just think it's a very crowded space. You cannot buy your way into it. You have to earn it. And you have to really have a beachhead of people who love what you do. The beachhead for a recent app that I invested in, Fitbod, Fitbod, is that people who do training, like CrossFit training, weight training, as opposed to say cardio like Fitbit, Fitbod is for doing CrossFit, and push-ups and dumbbells and kettlebells and all that kind of stuff. Their app is so gorgeous, so focused that they've got this really good group of people who are the same people who hire trainers and work out 3 or more times a week. They're crushing it. And they charge a monthly subscription fee. So again, like calm.com, an extremely focused app with a very specific purpose, with a very specific audience. So I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit down on it, but I see some bright spots. And I think the number of apps getting created and the number of people flooding the space and trying to buy ads, that might be changing a little bit. We could see that go down, and maybe consumers will open up and want to start installing them again. But we've gone through definitely a boom-bust cycle there. That being said, if you have a great product that solves a problem and or delights people while doing that, or just delights them, period, you'll be okay. All right, next question. This is a great question from S. Oasis. He says, how do you get entrepreneurs, people with an idea, to own their product and not dump it off to their product and or development team? So in other words, how do you get somebody who's a founder of a company who has a great idea to not just dump it off to the product team and to the developers and then give them no guidance? Well, twofold. There's two different ways to deal with this. One, if you're really the founder of a company and you're just dumping it and you're not using the product, it's probably not going to succeed. It's very rare that that has happened. In almost all cases I know of, the founders are obsessed with using their own products, whether it's, you know, Elon driving a Tesla, Uber, Travis taking Ubers, Travis driving for Uber, or Brian at Airbnb staying in Airbnbs, or, you know, Stuart from Slack using Slack, or David Sachs from Yammer using Yammer. You know, all these great entrepreneurs and founders, Melody from Style Seed, I'm an investor, like they use their product. So because they're using it, they're product-driven founders. Product-driven founders, like Steve Jobs, just go much further. And if you look when Steve Jobs passed away, tragically, and Tim Cook took over, what's the big complaint people have about Apple? Well, it didn't feel like Tim was as obsessed with product. And there was a little bit of a disjoint between the leadership of Apple and the products they were putting out. They put out, I think, 5 or 6 products that were largely panned and underwhelming. The MacBook Pro, the laptop you remember, they came out with that with the stupid touch bar on it, and all of their super fans panned it. They came out with the Mac Pro for desktop, the cylinder, and the fans absolutely panned it. They came out with the watch. Everybody bought one who was a super fan. Nobody wears them anymore. They panned it. They just keep coming out with stuff. Apple Music that's actually relatively good, but still people were not blown away by it and didn't have any impact on Spotify. So now you start looking at all of these things piling up. And the iPhone 7, although I've learned to love it, was not super overwhelming. It was just like, meh, it's okay. The new MacBook, the small one, the rose gold one, people weren't crazy about that. So you start to say, wait a second. Steve Jobs is gone, and the products coming out are completely underwhelming. People got very worried about that. And I think that's an example of a non-product driven founder, the person who was really good at managing the operations of Apple, being in charge. That being said, a company can get through those problems, and it seems like Tim Cook is now embracing product more. I see him testing their new glucose monitor. There was just a story today I read that he was actually wearing it and testing his glucose as if he had diabetes, which I don't believe he has. The AirPods, another exceptional product that I think is the best product they made since the iPad. So they might be coming back, and the person in the top position might be saying, you know what? I hear the criticism, and we're going to make it better. And you're actually seeing Apple, the mighty Apple, start to do little mini press junkets where they had everybody come together and told them, hey, the Mac Pro, the tower and the little cylinder they replaced it with, they said, hey, we made a mistake. We're going to fix it. We're going to get a better one out there. We hear you, because there was just such a riot going on. And so if you were the developer in this situation or the product manager, I think the other option is to be empowered, which is to say, stand up to your boss and say, I talked to the customers, I looked at the data, I use the product every day. Here are the things that suck about our product. Here is the evidence that these features that you came up with are not working. Here's the evidence that these two features that you came up with and these two that we propose are going to work, and here's the data. And you can just basically override the founder with your own personal experience. This is virtuous. So if somebody in my organization said, hey, Jason, I watched your Ask Jason Q&A, and I thought that 3 of your answers were weak for these reasons. And I looked at Quora and I looked on YouTube for other people's answers, and I found 2 blog posts. And if you had just read these blog posts by Fred Wilson and, this Quora answer by whoever, and, if you had just looked at this, you would have given a much better answer. I'd say, oh my God, thank you. Next time we have a Ask Jason, will you look at the questions ahead of time and let's have a discussion about my answers and make them better? Any reasonable, strong founder, they're going to love to get strong opinions from their people back. In fact, when you're the CEO and the founder, one of the things you love is when you have passionate, strong employees telling you, we need to do something different. We need to focus on this. This is the future. Because it gives you the reality check. You don't have to, and you always have the option to not do it. But to not get the feedback, to not get that kind of passion, it is infuriating and frustrating as a founder. So if you, in this question, always, if you are the product manager or the developer, I think just speak up, be a pain in the neck, and just speak your truth and get everybody rallied around talking to customers and looking at the data and just telling the truth. I know in my career there were times, I did do this. Like I dumped it on to people, say, hey, get it done, bring it back. And they would bring me back and they say, these 3 features nobody's using, can we take them out? And I'm like, no, I'm kind of attached to those features. Don't take them out. And I was like, you know what? Now I look back on it. Yeah, we probably should have taken those features out, because they just were creating cruft and things we had to maintain and things that could break. And you want to have singular greatness in these products. And singular greatness requires somebody being the advocate for the users and somebody having taste and making a decision and doing something unique in the world, right? That's why Evan Spiegel is doing so well with Snapchat. You can say what you want about the stock, getting a haircut of 1/3 or whatever it was, 30%, but that stock's still worth a lot more than every other app I know, or almost every app I know. So it's a tremendous success, and he just keeps coming up with great idea after great idea. So he's the type of founder who's obviously not just dumping it off to his team. He's having some really good discussion and listening to customers. Great question. All right, here's a great question from Michael. He asks, how do you keep thinking long-term, a goal of being a multi-billion-dollar company, say, when many people around you seem focused on early exits and making a few $1 million? It's a great question. We've seen this over and over again in Silicon Valley. And to make it clear to people, if you were 2 founders, let's say, and you had a management team of 5 people, and you started the company together, and you only did one round of financing, so you got diluted 30% with your Series A and your seed combined, or 40%. You still own team owns 60% of the company. And you're at it for 2 years, and somebody gives you a $40 million offer, and nobody on the team is independently wealthy. Now, 60% of $40 million, that's 4 times 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. It's $24 million. You got 6 people on the team. Everybody's going to make, maybe the top people are making 3 or 4 million. Maybe the bottom people are making $1 million or 2. But since everybody's broke, it basically means the difference between owning a house and going on great vacations and taking a couple of years off or not. So this becomes life-changing money. And okay, $40 million. If I'm going to make $3 million for 2 years of work, that sounds pretty good to me. In fact, when we sold Weblogs Inc., we got an offer for $30 million, 18 months after starting it, and we took the money. Back then, when we sold Weblogs Inc. and Gadget, Autoblog, Joystick, there wasn't this concept of a secondary market. What is a secondary market? A secondary market means that investors can buy shares from shareholders in a company to give them liquidity. What's liquidity? It's the ability to sell shares in private companies. So almost universally, the successful companies out there, whether it's Uber or SpaceX, have started to talk publicly about offering liquidity to their earliest employees, knowing that people from years 1, 2, 3, in years 4, 5, and 6 will be fully vested. They've been working there 5 or 6 years. Maybe they've got a spouse, maybe they've got a kid, and they're saying, hey, you worked at SpaceX for 5 years. My God, you've been grinding away at Airbnb for 6 years. Oh my God, you've been at Uber for 7 years, whatever it is. Can't we buy an apartment? I mean, on paper, we're worth $2 million. On paper, we're worth $10 million. Can't we just pay for private school? Why do we have to be under this pressure? Now those companies are starting to say, sure, we'll let you sell in an orderly fashion up to 10% of your shares, up to 20% of your shares. It's changed everything in the value. So if you are the leader or one of the leaders of this team and you want everybody to think long-term, there are some fundamental things you can put in place with your board and with corporate governance that will ease this transition to a long-term thinking company. The first is to set up a 5-year option plan with a year or 2 year vesting, a year or 2 year to execute your shares. So what that means is vesting. If I offered you 10,000 shares and you were going to get them over 4 years, you would get 2,500 shares a year or roughly 200 shares per month. You would be vesting those over 4 years. What some companies have done, I think Snapchat is one of them, but I don't know the exact terms of it, but I heard this. They have a 5-year vest, and they wait. Year 1, you get 10%, so it's not 20% a year. Year 1, you get 10. Year 2, you get 15. Year 3, you hit 20, and then in year 5, you get 30 or something, right? So it's weighted for people who stick around longer. So that's a way to incentivize long-term thinking. In addition to that, saying, hey, and if you leave the company, you don't have to come up with the money immediately in 30 days to buy your shares, because you have to buy those shares even though they're private, some execution price. You can wait a year or 2, which then gives people the ability to leave and come back and have their ability to keep their shares. So there are things you can do. You can set up an orderly secondary market, which means you can tell anybody who's in the company, if you've been here for over 2 years, you can sell up to 5% in year 3 and up to 10% in year 4 and another 10% in year 5. If you want to do this every January 15th, tell us how many shares you want to sell, and by April 1st, or right after tax day, by the end of April, May 1st, we're going to tell you how many shares you're able to sell and give you the money by June 1st. So every year you have that opportunity. So this orderly selling, I understand more and more companies are doing, and it just leans everybody towards long-term thinking. Another thing to do is make a 3 or 4 year plan. Make a 3 or 4 year plan and take people off site for a day to make a 3 or 4 year plan. I've done this in my companies before, and I like to set a year or 2 year plan. So I told Austin and the team at Inside once, hey, year 2017, I want to do 1 new newsletter per week at Inside and hit 50 by the end of the year. We're sitting here in, I think it's May, and we're already at 25. So we're going to easily cruise to 60 by the end of the year if we do 1 a week, or 50 if we do a little less than 1 a week. So what that means is they will have achieved that goal. What I told them was then at the end of 2018, I want to be able to raise a round of funding based on what we did in 2017 and hit 250 newsletters. They said, that's 5. If we have 60 newsletters in, that's another 190 newsletters. That's 4 newsletters per week. How would we ever do that? And I said, very simple. For the next year, we'll collect what newsletters people want, and we'll ask them to tell us what newsletters they want. And over time, we'll just know because we'll have people pre-subscribed. So we made this beautiful 2 year arc from here to there 250 newsletters, and I said with a goal of, maybe having 100,000 people on each one or 50,000 people on each one. You can do the math. You start to do the math, it gets pretty big, right? All of a sudden you got a couple million email subscribers, then all of a sudden you got tens of millions of email subscribers. You got a pretty serious business on your hands. So that's the job of the leader. There are corporate governance things you can do to set long-term thinking, and then there are planning things you can do, and talking to people about, hey, where would you like to be in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in the company? Okay, we're a 10-person company. You're the first salesperson. Do you see yourself being the president of the company? Do you see yourself transitioning from sales to marketing and being the CMO someday or VP of marketing? Do you see yourself being the director of sales and having 10 sales executives or 100 sales executives? You can actually talk to people about where do you see yourself? And a lot of times people are uncomfortable doing that. I've had many times I've talked to people about, hey, would you like to be CEO someday? Would you like to start your own company? And they're just like, And I said, listen, we're spitballing here. Give them permission to dream big and tell you where they see themselves in 4 or 5 years, and you can get them starting. You can start to plan with them how they get there. So with my former chief of staff, Bryce, he started as my executive assistant. Then he became my chief of staff. And then along the way, he was thinking about doing other things. I said, hey, what do you eventually want to do? And he said, well, I'd like to do marketing at a high growth company. And he wound up going to Benchmade Modern, the sofas by the inch company I invested in that you've seen on the program. So that was a great arc for him. I think he spent 4 years with me, started as an EA, went to chief of staff, and then he had two choices. He could have become like a partner type and invested with me or run the incubator, or he could have gone and been the CMO. He chose the latter. Mazel tov. I got to see him go to one of my portfolio companies. So as the leader, you can also start thinking about that. Hey, maybe over the next 5 years, I can keep somebody for 2 or 3 years. Maybe they go start their own company. I leave the door open for them to come back. I have an open door policy for people who are good people and who leave on good terms, right? And don't leave the organization in worse shape than when they showed up. So it's a great question, Michael, getting people to do long-term thinking. For everybody who's listened to this episode, I thank you for the great questions. We only got through, one page of the 5 or 6 pages that got sitting in front of me, but it's really a delight to be able to share with you all the things I've learned from the 100 and, getting close to 150 investments I've made. I am in a very unique position in life where the greatest entrepreneurs, the most interesting people pitch me on what they think is going to happen in the world and how they're going to build products and services to help that change in the world or to deal with those changes. And sometimes I get to invest in them and watch them grow, fail, and everything in between and learn. And being an angel investor is a true privilege. I take it seriously to be able to write those checks, and I take it seriously that you watch the program here and that you listen and that you ask the questions and that you join this dialogue with me. If you want to continue the dialogue, and I sincerely hope you do want to continue the dialogue, you can go to community.thisweekinstartups.com and you can join our Mighty Networks network, community.thisweekinstartups.com. It's a great way for the 150,000 people who download every episode. I think we have 1% of them now, over 1,500, maybe close to 2,000 in the group. So 1% of you have joined us over there. I'm hoping to get it to maybe 2 or 3. Hey, maybe someday 5% of you could have 5,000 people in that group talking about startups and sharing experiences. If you have questions, email askjason@launch.co. Askjason@launch.co. I get asked hundreds of questions a week by founders that I've invested in and hundreds more by founders I haven't yet invested in. And I love to answer them here in this forum or at community.thisweekinstartups.com. Why? Because it's two-way. I know you're going to email me, jason@launch.co, or hit me up on Twitter @Jason, or hit me up on Instagram @Jason on Instagram as well, and tell me if you think I could have given a better answer, or if you have better insights, and if you have a question, we'll feature you on the next This Week in Startups. We do probably an Ask Jason every 2 months or so, maybe 6 a year, and it's just a great privilege to do them. So thank you for tuning in, and thanks to Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie for producing the show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.